Hi, it's Bill Hitchcock, and this is our second part of working with powers. I'm going to set this up on a spreadsheet so you can see a little bit easier how some of these powers work, and we can quickly try some different numbers to see what the results are. So I would encourage you to try setting this up on your own spreadsheet. I've just got a new sheet here. I zoom this in to 170% to make it hopefully a little bit easier to see on the screen. And up in cell A1, I'm just going to type in the word base. That's my number that I'm going to use as my numeric base. And normally we start out with 10, or in other words, with a decimal number. Under that, I want to take a look at raising 10 to certain powers. So I want to see what the result is going to be. And then finally, I'm going to format these numbers as a fraction to help understand the concept behind raising numbers to a power. So when we sketched this out, what we did is we tried raising numbers to a negative power. We tried raising numbers to a positive power. So we're going to start out and just take 10 raised to the 0, and then I want to take the previous cell, add 1 to it, so I get 1, and I can copy this down. And we can see what happens when we raise 10 to the 0 power, 10 to the first, 10 squared, 10 cubed, 10 to the fourth, and so on, and see how fast these numbers quickly start to build up. So to get the result, what I'll do is I'm just going to say, take an equal sign. I want to raise my base, and I always want to refer to this cell. So in order to always refer to the cell, you can hold your function key, hit F4 once, and actually all I really need to do is hit it twice so I get a dollar sign in front of the number 1. In other words, when I copy this formula down, it's always going to reference row number 1. And then I'm going to raise that to a power. So the operation to raise a number to a power in Excel is a caret. The caret is above your number 6. So I held my shift key down, hit the number 6, I've got a caret there, and now I'm going to point to the power. In this case, it's 0. That's in cell A4. So I just took my left arrow, cursored over to cell A4, and we'll hit enter, and 10 to the 0 is 1. That's our identity. That was any number raised to the 0 power is always 1. All right, now what I can do is I could copy this formula down and see what happens when we get all the results. So if I double click on the fill handle here, it's going to copy this all the way down next to the number, to the first, to the second, to the third, and the fourth, and so on. So we double click, and there we go. So 10 to the 0 is 1, 10 to the first is 10, 10 squared is 10 times 10, or 100, 10 cubed is 10 times 10 times 10, or 1,000. There's 10 to the fourth, notice it's 1 with 4 zeros. 10 to the fifth, 1 with 5 zeros. 10 to the sixth, 1 with 6 zeros. 10 to the seventh, 1 with 7 zeros. And then down here you see this 1e to the eighth. It's just saying take 1 times 10 to the 80 power, or eighth power. And we could format this a little bit wider and you could see what the numbers would look like. All right, well now what we want to do is we want to change this number up here. So rather than starting at 0, I'm going to type in a -5, and then because I added 1 to the previous cell and all those other formulas, it's going to give me -4, -3, -2, -1, and so on. And there we go. So now that I've done that, let's start down here at 0. As we said, 10 to the 0 power is 1. 10 to the first is 10, 10 squared, 10 cubed, 10 to the fourth, 1 with 4 zeros, 10 to the fifth, 1 with 5 zeros. But at -1, I'm getting 0.1. In other words, it's taking 1 divided by 10 to the first. So let's format those cells as a fraction. So what I can do is I'm just going to reference the cell that's 1 to the left of it, cell B4, and I'm just going to copy this down. But right now what I've got these numbers formatted as is it uses what's called a general format. All right, so if you look up here on the Home tab, here in the number group, you can see it's just got general. In other words, there's no formatting on these numbers. Down at the bottom, what I want to do is I want to format these numbers with a comma format, get rid of the decimal points, just to make it a little bit easier to see when we have large numbers. You can see where we've got a comma separating those um, thousands units. All right, for the fractions, what I can do is I'm going to highlight these cells, and then I'm going to right click on it, choose Format Cells. In the number category, there's number, alignment, font, border, etc. All right, choose number. You want to look at these categories. There's a fraction format. And there's all sorts of different fraction formats that we can try out. I'm going to use the one that's up to 3 digits. So I'll hit OK. And for these first couple, it doesn't really tell me a whole lot. It just displays a 0 just because I can't get the fraction small enough. But if you look down here, 10 to the 0 was 1. 10 to the negative 1 is 1 over 10 to the first, or 1/10. 10 to the negative 2 is 1 over 10 squared, 1/100th. All right, so now we want to try this with a different number base. Let's try base 2. Base 2 really illustrates this quite well. 2 to the 0 power gives me 1. 2 to the first is 2. 2 to the second is 2 times 2, or 4. 2 to the third is 2 times 2 times 2, or 8. 2 to the fourth is 8 times 2, or 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 16. Multiply it by another 2, you get 32, 64, 128, 256. We can just keep doubling those numbers. But when we use negative fraction or negative exponents, 2 to the negative 1 is 1 over 2 to the first. It's 1/2. As a decimal number, that's 0.5. 2 to the negative 2 is 1 over 2 squared, 1/4, 0.25. 2 to the negative 3 is 1 over 2 times 2 times 2, 1 over 2 cubed, 1 over 8. As a fraction, 1.25. So once you've got the spreadsheet set up, you can try it with base 3 and see what happens. And here we go. 3 to the 0 power is 1. 3 to the first is 3. 3 squared is 9. 3 cubed, 27. 1/3, 1/9, 1/27th. It's taking 1 divided by 3 to the third, and so on. We'll try the fourth. 4 to the 0 power is 1. 4 to the first is 4. 4 squared, 4 times 4, 16. 4 cubed, 16 times 4, or 4 times 4 times 4, 64. And you can see what's happening. And if you look at negative powers, 1/4, 1/16, 1/64, 1, 2, or 256. So I hope this gives you a little bit of an understanding about kind of working with powers a bit. Again, try set up the spreadsheet, or use, I'll put this one out there for you. Try some different numbers, try to the 5th, try to the 6th, try to the 7th, and so on. And you can see what happens with some of these different fractions and numbers. Go back to the 10th, see what happens with that. Go back to the base of 2, and you can see what happens with it. I hope this gives you a little bit better understanding about working with powers and how we're doing some of these calculations.